Good afternoon, everyone. So today is our first week of the second quarter lesson on a topic or on our subject, business finance. So today our lesson will be all about introduction to investment and personal finance. But before that, let me first read to you the objectives. At the end of this chapter, the students should be able to A. Discuss future value of single amount. B. Describe future value of annuity. C. Differentiate present value of single amount and annuity. And letter D. State the formula to compute for present and future values. So our first topic will be all about time value of money. So under the time value of money, we have the future value single amount. So the time value of money plays a very significant role in making long-term investment. The basic tenet in finance relative to time value of money is the peso today is worth more than a peso in the future. So the present applications of the values of money analysis include, among others, determination of the value of retirement, computations of the value of stocks and bond, and preparation of amortization schedule of long-term bank borrowings. So in time value of money analysis, compound interest and not simple interest is applied. So when you say simple interest, this means that the amount of interest is computed only once during the term of the investment of borrowing, regardless of whether the term is less than 1 year, equal to 1 year, or more than 1 year. So we have here the formula for the simple interest. So this is how we compute the simple interest. With the formula, I is equal to P times X times R times T. So again, I is equal to P times R times T, where I is the interest, P is the principal, R is the rate, and T is the time. So next is we have the compound interest. So when you say compound interest, on the other hand, this indicates that the interest of one compounding period is added to the principal of the prior period to form the new principal as basis for computing the interest of succeeding periods. So we have here an example illustration or problem. So illustration 1, Nicanor has investment of 300,000 pesos at 6% simple interest for a period of 3 years. So what we are going to do is we have to compute the simple interest. So the answer here, since the term of the interest is simple, so the amount of interest is computed only once. Again, if the term of the interest is simple, the amount of interest is computed only once. So applying the formula, the simple interest for 3 years appear as follows. So we are going to use the formula I is equal to P times R times T. So first is we have to identify our principal, our rate, and our time. So based on the problem, our principal there is 300,000, and then our rate is 6%, and our time is 3 years. So we will just simply multiply those three so that we can get the interest. So our interest is 54,000 pesos. So it can be observed that through the term of the investment is 3 years, so the amount of interest is only computed once. So the computation of interest follows the banker's rule. So banker's rule, that is using 360 days as the denominator wherever the term is expressed in number of days. So we have here an example. So in the term in illustration, we have is 120 days, and then the interest will be 6,000 pesos as computed. So we have an example problem. So we are going to use the simple interest formula, which is the interest is equal to the principal times rate times time. So our principal again is 300,000 rather, based on the problem that we had a while ago. And then the same also our interest is 6%, and then 120 days only. So we just change the time. So on the first problem we have the time there is 3 years, but now we have this is 120 days. So what you're going to do, we are going to add the denominator, which is 360. So 360 is the equivalent of the one whole year. So 1 year is equivalent to 360 days. So 360 days, that will be the denominator of our days, which is 120. Okay, so now when we are going to multiply, so our interest now is 6,000 pesos. So that's how you're going to use the simple interest given the days, not the year. So, in the succeeding discussions, compound interest is used and simple interest computation does not apply to investment vacation. So next is we have the future value. So understanding future value is necessary for proper time money value analysis. So future value or FV, otherwise known as the compound amount, is the accumulated value of the principal of the present value, which is the PV, and all interest amount of the prior periods. So in other words, it is the value in the future of a certain amount invested today at a specific compounded interest rate. So we have here another example. So Jenny has invested 10,000 pesos on January 1, 2018 at 10% interest compounded annually for 5 years. So you have to compute the future value at the end of the 5 years. So the answer here is that the future value refers to the amount at the end of the 5th year as an interest of 8% is earned based on the compounded amount at the beginning of every year. So this is illustrated in the timeline as follows. So based on our picture, so our present value is 10,000 pesos and our future value is still unknown. So the future value indicates the compounding of interest. So as mentioned, compounding simply means that the interest at the end of one compounding period is added to the principal as basis of computing the interest for the next period. So as a step-by-step process to determine the future value of 10,000 pesos at 10% compounded annually for 5 years is as follows. So we have our first column is the year. And then for our second column, so first column is these are the lists of periods of compounding. And then column 2, here is what we call, this shows the principal or the present value at the beginning of the period. So in year 1, the amount of 10,000 pesos represents the initial investment. So that's based on the problem given a while ago. So in the succeeding period, the amounts signify the future value of the preceding period. Next is for the column 3. This represents the interest for one compounding period. So it is computed by multiplying the principal with the interest and the compounding period. So for year 1, the interest of 1,000 pesos is computed as 10,000 pesos times 10%. So the 10% of 10,000 pesos is 1,000 pesos. Next, for column 4, this refers to the future amount at the end of the compounding period. So it is determined by adding column 2 and column 3, wherein column 2 is the principal and the column 3 is the interest for you to get the future amount. So amounts are rounded off to the nearest peso to highlight the process. Next, so as computed using the step-by-step approach, so the future amount of 10,000 pesos invested at 10% compounded annually is 16,105 pesos. So the timeline appears as follows. So we have here now the timeline from the present value, which is 10,000 pesos, up to the future value, which is now 16,105 pesos. So it can be observed that the value of investment increases along with the period because of interest in interest. So investment is only made once at the beginning of the period. So just imagine how tedious the mathematical computations is if the period is 50 years. So the annual interest is computed 50 times also. So it is much more complex if the period covers 364 years, as in the case of the sale in Manhattan in 1624. So that could be all our lesson for this week, and we will see you next meeting. That could be all. Thank you and goodbye.